Why do introverts hate phone calls? Why do they hate making them, receiving them? Why do they just generally hate using the phone as a means of communication? Well, guess what? I've got 7 reasons. And it's funny because extroverts are like, do introverts really struggle with the phone? Do they really hate the phone that much? Why? Doesn't make any sense. Well, you're about to find out. And stay tuned to the end where I talk about my struggle with the phone and how I actually got okay with phone calls. But before we jump into it, this video is sponsored by Audible. Wouldn't you rather be listening to an audiobook than making a phone call? I know I would. Audible has an unparalleled selection of audiobooks for you to choose from, including one I'm listening to right now, The Untethered Soul. It's a really great book talking about how the thoughts in our head can often cause us all this unnecessary anxiety in life and we don't have to listen to them. What? So go to audibletrial.com/FJ and get a 30-day free trial, which includes a free audiobook yours to keep forever. That's audibletrial.com/FJ. My name. Reason number 1 for introverts hating phone calls, specifically receiving them, is that it interrupts us. Now, extroverts don't like being interrupted either, but I think they're better at just taking whatever is thrown at them. Introverts, they have a harder time switching gears. There's also something about the surprising nature of receiving a phone call that puts an introvert off because it's like, oh no, social interaction, I wasn't expecting this. Introverts like to be prepared for interactions with other people, so a phone call out of the blue, not so good. Number 2, especially when it comes to receiving calls, is that introverts don't like to be held hostage by phone conversations. Generally, introverts kind of have a difficult time ending conversations, and phone conversations are no exception, and perhaps even worse. Like, oh, here's this conversation going 30 minutes. Oh, wait, no, now it's an hour. Now it's 2 hours. Why don't you have anything better to do with your life? Why are you still talking to me? And if you add on top of that the call being unexpected, wow, that's like a double whammy. Number 3 reason why introverts don't like phone calls is it's inefficient. It's an inefficient means of communication, especially when there are things that you could tell us in a text or in an email, or just wait until you see us in person the next time. Especially when it comes to work. Why do people need to talk on the phone when email exists? With an email or a text, I can read it anytime I want and I don't have to reply right away. With a phone call, I might not remember everything you say and it's going to take you twice as long to say it, if not longer, than it would take me to read it. Number 4, this is an interesting one. We're really getting into the depths of this topic now. Introverts don't like phone calls. In fact, we hate them because there are no visual cues. You can't read what's going on someone else's face. And introverts really rely on being able to see other people's faces to kind of read between the lines. Introverts are very sensitive about this, and they often tend toward the negative aspect of things. If someone has an expression that looks more or less neutral, the introvert will be like, oh no, that person hates me. So when you take that out of it and we're just going on the voice, inflection, it's a lot easier for an introvert to be like, oh crap, this person must hate me. I must be totally irritating to them, because we have one less thing to look at. We have nothing to look at, actually. All right, let's pause real quick and see if YouTube would like to show a commercial. Thanks for sitting through that, my knee. The number 5 reason is that introverts are worried about miscommunication. And I think this happens when we're calling the pizza place to order a pizza. We're just worried, like, am I going to be able to understand the person on the other end? Are they going to be able to understand me? Am I going to have to repeat myself? Am I going to have to ask them, what did you say 5 times? We do this in person even, but on the phone, you add in this element of, phone calls aren't crystal clear, and it just causes a lot of anxiety, worrying about, are we going to understand each other? Number 6 is that introverts are worried that they're bothering the other person when they make a call. This is something I'm going to have to explore in more depth, because I think in general, introverts feel like they're bothering everyone, like they're irritating everyone around them, and that's why they don't like to initiate a lot of contact. When you take into account the fact that introverts themselves get irritated by unexpected phone calls, they really don't want to then impose that on someone else. But what's funny is, even going back to the pizza delivery example, You'll call up somewhere that's a business and worry that you're irritating them. Hey, I'm sorry, I just wanted to order a pizza. It's like, it's their job to take the phone call, yet we still feel like we're inconveniencing them somehow. How many phone calls of mine have started with, I'm sorry, but the number 7 reason why introverts hate phone calls is that they're worried about interactions in general. Like if I had to go up and talk to someone in person, that would be, somewhat nerve-wracking and or draining. Then you add in all this stuff with the phone, that I can't see their face, that there could be miscommunication, that I'm gonna have to listen extra hard to make sure that I understand everything that's coming out of their mouth. It makes it super draining, especially if you get caught on a long call, if you get taken unexpectedly, unawares by someone calling you. It's like one of the more draining forms of communication that there is. Now, on a personal note, I myself used to be extremely anxious about using the phone. I absolutely hated it. If I had to make a phone call, especially if it was cold calling someone, someone who wasn't necessarily expecting it, I would take a long time to prepare myself and ready myself. And I think that, that goes with that last point there, is that for introverts who are more anxious, it takes a lot out of them to prepare for a phone call. It's like, you gotta think through it, you gotta mentally rehearse it. I eventually got over it. Now I'm able to use the phone to call strangers and feel okay with it. I mean, I don't love it. I prefer not to use the phone, but I can do it without feeling like I need to throw up. And the way I got over it, which is not something that you're necessarily going to want to hear, but it's just by doing it. I was forced into making a lot of phone calls. I was at an office job where I was answering the phone, I was fielding calls, and it was a bunch of people who were asking a bunch of questions that I often didn't understand or didn't know how to answer, so I was being put in these really awkward situations. But then also, I was having to call people, and they weren't expecting to hear from me, and often I was asking them questions that they didn't want to answer. They weren't happy to hear from me. I was telling them, that they owed money, etc. But ultimately, I bring that up to show you, to encourage you, that if you are frightened to death of the phone, that exposing yourself to it, forcing yourself to do a little bit at a time to get over that fear, that will, it'll eventually work. Eventually you will be able to call people without feeling sick to your stomach. However, I don't think there's really a way to get over the preference against using a phone. There's just the general, I really don't want to do that. Thanks for watching, audibletrial.com/FJ. Give it a like. Till next time, stay cool and attractive.